crazy stepmother couldn't accept that my father left his entire estate in my name instead of the kids she brought into the family who wanted nothing to do with him despite his endless efforts. So she snatched the keys to my home and tried to force her way inside, but oh boy. Even I was stunned when I discovered this is what Dad had in store for her. Can you imagine discovering that the people who terrorized your childhood would one day become your step-siblings, and then watch them slowly drain the life out of your own father? What would you do when the woman responsible for it all, after his death, tried to steal everything he left you, only to walk right into the most cinematic trap imaginable? Okay, so I, 24F, grew up in a really unique situation. My dad, Theo, is a movie producer, so we had a comfortable life, even if he wasn't exactly a household name internationally, living in a smaller coastal country. My mom, his first love, passed away tragically right after giving birth to me when they were both just 24. For nearly 10 years, my dad was a single parent, and honestly, he put me first above everything. Women were always interested, but I was his priority. When I was 12, we moved to a bigger, more film-centric city. That's when things got rough. I had a terrible time adjusting, mostly because of these two boys in my grade. They relentlessly bullied me, making fun of my clothes my dad had picked out, by the way. One day, it escalated, and they actually pushed me down 2 flights of stairs. My dad was called to the school, but with his insane schedule, he couldn't even meet with them or their parents. He was always there for me in spirit, but his job often kept him from being physically present. Seeing how much I struggled, he made a tough decision. He sent me to live with my grandparents. And my grandparents? They were angels. They raised me like their own, pouring so much love into me. My dad would visit on holidays, but that was pretty much the extent of our contact for the next 6 years. It's safe to say I grew distant. Then, when I was 15, I started to notice something was off. I'd overhear my grandparents whispering, their voices hushed, about something related to my father. I confronted them, hoping it meant my dad was finally ready for me to come home. That's when they told me my dad had remarried. A woman he met on a shoot. Let's call her Lisa. They had eloped the day before and were coming to visit us. I wasn't happy. I felt abandoned, like he'd just started a whole new family without me. But what could I do? I pouted and waited. Lisa had this vibe from the moment she stepped into my grandparents' home. All this pretentious kindness, a performance just for my dad's sake. In that moment, I was actually glad I didn't live with him anymore. As we talked, it came out. She was divorced, with 2 kids. Kids I might meet if I ever visited my dad's mansion. My dad did ask if I wanted to live with him now that I was older, but I flat out refused. The hurt of feeling abandoned was still too fresh. So they left. Later, my grandparents and I all agreed. Our instincts about her being fake were spot on. I finished my education in their town, working tirelessly to get into film school. I got into the best one, but there was a catch. It was in my dad's city. I was happy and independent with my grandparents, but I feared moving there would mean constant restrictions from my dad. I'd always been interested in the technical side of film, especially camera work. When my dad found out I'd been accepted, he was ecstatic, wanting me back in his life. I made it crystal clear. If I stayed in the city, I wasn't going to be constantly monitored by him or his new family. He agreed. I was still doubtful, but after my grandparents' repeated insistence, I decided to go. My dad invited me to his place. I initially refused, but with his and Lisa's persistent invitations, I eventually agreed to visit. Walking into that mansion, it felt alien. There were no traces of me ever living there. The walls were covered in pictures of Lisa and her kids, a few with my dad sprinkled in. He looked so thin and pale, and I immediately worried about him. He offered to pay my tuition and let me stay there, but I said no. I didn't want any petty funds from him. I got a student loan and moved into a college dorm. As I was leaving that afternoon, I met Lisa's kids, who had just returned from their acting coaching classes. That's when I got the biggest shock of my life. My stomach dropped. It was them. The boys who had bullied me relentlessly, the ones who pushed me down the stairs. Jake and James. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell my dad everything, but I barely knew him anymore. How would he react? So, I called my grandparents instead. They told me I'd done the right thing by not telling him. It had been years since he and Lisa married, and it could destroy what little relationship we had. I swallowed my anger. acknowledged James and Jake for formality's sake, and left as fast as I could. Later, my grandparents filled me in on Jake and James's background. Their biological father was a wealthy businessman, but Lisa had somehow manufactured domestic violence claims to get the kids into her new marriage with my dad. Dad, who never wanted more kids, agreed for Lisa's sake. He'd known them since they were 15, and they'd never failed to remind him they weren't his. He poured money into them, gave them everything, only for them to constantly disrespect him, even in front of relatives. These two were a huge part of why I was kept away from my dad in the first place. Lisa, meanwhile, just stood by. She couldn't have cared less. This whole situation was destroying my dad. Their marriage had been rocky from the start, but with me back in the city, my dad finally felt like he had someone he could trust. He'd indirectly confide in me, dropping hints about his relationship with Lisa, how she was spending a fortune on her kids' careers, and he suspected it was all a scam. I tried to stay out of it, just listening to him rant. But one thing was clear, this marriage was going to fail, and soon. Over the course of my studies, I'd visit my dad on weekends. Honestly, I never felt welcome at their house, so I stopped for a while. But then a few months into college, I got devastating news. My dad had late-stage cancer. Just a few years left. Seeing him in such pain was awful, but what hurt even more was how incredibly unhappy he was in his marriage. Jake had even gotten a recurring role in a sitcom because of my dad, but neither son ever treated him like a father. They saw him as an ATM, and Lisa, infuriatingly, never saw a problem with it. By the time my father was on his deathbed, Lisa had practically stopped visiting him in the hospital. She barely showed up. My dad, in his final days, cried to me, feeling abandoned by his wife and stepchildren. We weren't incredibly close, but seeing his raw pain, his loneliness, it broke my heart. I tried to talk to Lisa, urging her to be there for him, and her response was chillingly insensitive. She'd rather look after her future than wait for someone to become past. She was, without a doubt, the worst human I had ever met. My dad passed away soon after I finished my course. Lisa was at his wake for maybe 15 minutes, maximum, just long enough for the important industry people to see her. Her sons, they didn't even bother to show their faces. That day, I made a silent promise. These people were no longer family. I was done. I planned to move to another state to kickstart my film career a week after the wake. But then, my dad's lawyer summoned me to the mansion. Immediately, when I arrived, Lisa and her kids were already there, seething with impatience. Dad's lawyer began. Before he passed, my dad had declared his will. He left me almost 70% of his assets, including the mansion. My grandparents, who were already well off, received 20%. And Lisa, a measly 10% plus a condo in the city. Then, the lawyer read out a final message from my dad, apologizing for not being the father he wished he could be. I was overwhelmed, tears welling up. But the real shocker? That was for Lisa and her children. Her face twisted into a mask of pure fury before she stormed out. I asked my dad's lawyer what the consequences of this could be, and he assured me I had nothing to worry about. Anything those three tried would definitely be illegal. My plans to move? Instantly canceled. I had a home now. Soon after, I called Lisa. You need to come get all your and your kids' stuff. I told her, this isn't your home anymore. She was predictably outraged. How can you be so cruel? She shrieked. After everything we're going through? I smiled. I'd rather look at the future than my past, I said, repeating her exact words. She hung up on me. It was glorious. She got a taste of her own medicine, and honestly, I relished her misery, even through the nasty texts she sent for days. I took a weekend trip to my grandparents to tell them everything. They weren't as shocked as I was. They'd suspected Lisa's true intentions for ages. But they were thrilled she was getting her comeuppance for how she treated their son. Returning to the city after a good weekend, I found the mansion door wide open. Burglar alarm bells went off in my head. I called the cops and my dad's lawyer. He was the only one I trusted implicitly. The police quickly realized it wasn't a random break-in. It was Lisa and her kids. They were acting completely entitled, claiming it was their home, and no one could kick them out. They even accused my dad's lawyer of faking the will, conspiring with me. There's no way Theo, Lisa's dear husband, and James and Jake's father would do them so dirty, they raged. The cops were ready to arrest them for breaking and entering, but my dad's lawyer intervened. "Don't send them to jail just yet," he said. "I have a better plan." I eyed him suspiciously, but decided to trust him, asking the cops to hold off. He pulled the officers aside, whispered something, and they left almost immediately. He then invited us all inside, telling us to wait while he retrieved something. I was terrified, alone with those three, but Lisa knew better than to risk assault charges, so we waited. They, of course, continued to berate me. A few minutes later, my dad's lawyer returned, carrying a box. What he said next, no one saw coming. Apparently, my dad had known for a while that Lisa was cheating, especially once he started getting sick and her behavior drastically shifted. He talked to his lawyer about it. To protect my interests, he added a critical clause to the will. Lisa's share could increase by 30%, taken from my portion, if she consented to be faithful to him for the rest of his life. And it would only happen if she signed the consent form. She immediately agreed, her eyes lighting up at the thought of more money. The lawyer handed her the papers, which she signed without a second thought. Her face, beaming with avarice, was about to come crashing down. Because the agreement also stated that if Lisa was found guilty of cheating, with proof, she would lose even the initial 10% in the condo. She'd signed it, believing there was no way any evidence could be gathered. Once everyone understood the terms, my dad's lawyer pulled out a pen drive and some physical photos from the box. He handed the pictures to me and played videos on his laptop. My dad, ever the producer, had secretly installed a CCTV camera in the living room to catch her. It not only showed Lisa with another man in the house, but it captured intimate moments that left no doubt about her infidelity. The photos were even more damning. It sounded like a TV show plot, but my dad had clearly learned a lot from his career. Lisa's face turned ashen. She finally realized what she'd done. She immediately threw a colossal tantrum, shrieking that it was unfair, and that she should have been told about the proof. My dad's lawyer calmly reminded her that even this very conversation, where the rules of the will were clearly explained, was being recorded by the camera right behind her. He then told her to go pack her things and leave the condo she was given. James quickly took his mother and left with her. They knew they were trapped. Before he left, my dad's lawyer advised me to prepare for a court case and to change the locks immediately. I listened. I called my grandparents, telling them about the whole dramatic reveal. They decided to come stay with me for a few days to ensure my safety. As my dad's lawyer predicted, Lisa and her kids marched straight to their lawyer. They sued me, claiming they were deceived into signing the contract and that my dad's will was coerced. Honestly, I have no idea how she planned to prove these outrageous claims, but my lawyer assured me we had nothing to worry about. Lisa, being Lisa, then tried to manipulate my grandparents into siding with her, hoping they'd push for a larger share of the inheritance for her. When they shunned her, she then tried to gaslight them, implying that I was behind their smaller share. My grandma, for a moment, actually believed her, but my grandpa always stood by me. So, Lisa's efforts were wasted. I even offered my grandparents the mansion, cementing their support. She then threatened me in a voice call. I immediately filed for a restraining order, which I thankfully got. This whole mess was supposed to be quiet, staying within legal channels. But Lisa, my very smart stepmother, decided to go to the film fraternity, crying wolf about her dead husband, pressuring her, and how I'd conspired to leave her with nothing. Many knew my father as a kind man and called her bluff, suggesting she get help. Others questioned why she, with her own good job, was so desperate for money. Her plan for sympathy backfired spectacularly. Jake even lost the job my dad had helped him get. The production company didn't want the controversy. The only bad thing was that local tabloids picked up the story, and now they were hounding me and my grandparents for comments. My lawyer advised us to stay away from the negative attention, but it was getting harder every day. It's been a few more days, and things have only gotten worse. I truly thought Lisa would back off after losing credibility and Jake losing his job, but I was wrong. She just doubled down. This time, she wasn't just targeting me legally. She was going after my friends, my family, spreading lies, trying to isolate me. First, my lawyer received a letter from Lisa's team, claiming I was emotionally unfit to manage the estate. Her argument: I was grieving, incapable of handling complex finances. It felt like a low blow, weaponizing my grief, especially after how hard I'd been working. Worse, she claimed I had a history of mental health issues and couldn't make rational decisions. The letter even named, concerned, family friends I hadn't spoken to in years. She was trying to paint me as unstable. My lawyer reassured me it was a desperate attempt, that our evidence would hold up, but the sheer maliciousness of it still stung. I also heard through acquaintances that Lisa was contacting my dad's former business partners, trying to turn them against me, painting me as incompetent. Thankfully, most knew my dad well enough to dismiss her. The final straw came yesterday. My car was keyed, and a nasty note on the windshield read, "Karma's coming for you." I can't prove it was Lisa, but given everything, it certainly felt like her. I filed a police report, but without evidence, there's little they can do. Still, it left me rattled. This wasn't just legal battles anymore, it was outright harassment. My lawyer and I are now preparing to bring up the restraining order again, along with the harassment and defamation. At this point, I'm not just defending myself legally, I'm fighting for my sanity, my peace of mind. Every time I think she's hit rock bottom, she finds a new way to drag me back into the chaos. I had a long talk with my grandparents, my absolute rocks through all of this. They're as fed up as I am. My grandpa even suggested selling the mansion, moving far away and starting fresh. And honestly, it was tempting. The idea of leaving all this toxicity behind, building a new life where Lisa couldn't touch me, sounded like a dream. But this was my dad's home. It's been a whirlwind, but things have finally reached a turning point. Lisa was officially taken to court, and let me tell you, things did not go her way. After months of legal threats and mudslinging, the court ruled entirely in my favor. Her claims about being deceived and my dad being coerced, utterly dismissed. It was clear she and her lawyer were grasping at straws, trying to conjure a case out of thin air. When the judge delivered the verdict, I saw the shock ripple across Lisa's face. She truly believed she could manipulate the system, just like she tried to manipulate everyone else. But it didn't work. What happened next was even more chaotic. Right after the hearing, there was an explosive confrontation in the courthouse hallway between Lisa and her sons, Jake and James. I couldn't hear everything, but from what I gathered, they were absolutely furious with her for losing. They'd clearly assumed they were going to get a better deal, and when it became clear Lisa's lies had led them down a dead end, they weren't happy. There was a lot of yelling, and at one point, Jake stormed out, leaving Lisa and James behind. James followed soon after. They were definitely not on speaking terms anymore. Later that evening, I got an unexpected call from Jake. He apologized for how everything had turned out, admitting that he and his brother had been blind to what their mother was doing. He even went as far as to say Lisa had manipulated them for years, making them believe my dad was the villain when she was the one who caused all the problems. He asked if we could meet to talk, but honestly, I just wasn't interested. After everything, I had no desire to get involved with them. I thanked him for the apology, but made it clear I wasn't looking to continue any kind of relationship. I'd been through too much. I told Jake I wished them well, but it was best if we all moved on separately. All right, this is it. The final update on this whole saga. It's been a few months since the court case, and things have finally, mercifully, settled down. After everything Lisa pulled, the court's ruling was such a relief. There was no sympathy left for her, not from me, not from her own sons, and certainly not from the wider public she tried to manipulate. She tried to lie and cheat her way into a bigger share of my dad's estate, but in the end, all she had to show for it was humiliation. After the court case, I released a short statement through my lawyer. I wanted to avoid more drama, so I kept it simple. The will was legitimate, the court confirmed my father's wishes, and Lisa's actions had been hurtful and unnecessary, especially after everything my dad did for her and her kids. I made it clear I wouldn't comment further. Since then, Lisa's situation has only worsened. Her attempts to play the victim failed spectacularly. The industry my dad had helped her get into has pretty much blacklisted her. No one wants to work with someone who wears out their family's dirty laundry so manipulatively. Word got around about her lies. Last I heard, Jake and James cut ties with Lisa completely. They moved out of the condo and haven't spoken to her since. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard they tried to find work in the industry, but no one would take a chance on them. It's sad really, but I can't bring myself to feel bad for any of them. They stood by while Lisa made those false claims and went along with her lies. As for my grandparents, they've been my absolute rock. After everything was settled, I offered them the mansion as a gift. They were hesitant at first, but eventually they accepted. I know my dad would have loved for them to have it. It feels like the right thing to do, and honestly, it gives me peace of mind knowing the mansion is in good hands. They've already started talking about renovations, keeping the heart of the home intact. It'll be their space now, and I'm so happy for them. And me! I'm moving on to a new chapter. A huge project came up overseas, and I'm taking it. It's a massive career opportunity, and it couldn't have come at a better time. After everything with Lisa, I realized I needed a fresh start, a change of scenery, new challenges, a chance to focus on myself and my work, far away from all that toxicity. Before I leave, I'm spending as much time as I can with my grandparents. So that's my story. I'm curious, though, after hearing everything, what would you have done in my place? Have you ever dealt with such manipulative people in your own family? Let me know in the comments below. I'd really love to hear your thoughts.